Bonjour, je m'appelle Victoria et en ce moment, je vais parler avec vous en français au sujet du sujet de l'expression humaine et les langues. By the blank looks on your faces, I'm assuming you have no idea what I just said. That's perfectly understandable. That wasn't English. My name is Victoria Zerbst, and for about 3 months, I had that same blank look tattooed on my face when I recently traveled to France for a student exchange, where I was surrounded by foreign sounds and foreign words. I really was surprised how difficult it was to overcome the barriers of language. I had to find different ways of coping, and one coping mechanism that worked really well was by breaking down the language barrier through the language of music. Most of my friends in France loved music, and they all played instruments. So often during lunchtime, we would go to the music room and just play. It was a great way because I couldn't speak to them in French, they couldn't speak to me in English, so we connected through music. I even managed to teach some of my friends some English, and I even taught them about life in Sydney by performing a song that I wrote about living in this great city, which I'll perform at the end of my speech. Not being able to understand French was difficult enough without the added embarrassment of being misunderstood. I remember once I had to read out a poem in my French class. It was a famous and treasured French poem that was very true to all the French ideals. It was about protest and death. I was doing pretty well, and I thought I was going great until I came to the last line. It was the climax of the poem. The main character was just about to die as she would yell out, "Pas pour l'amour de mon père," which translates to, "Not for the love of my father." It would have been pretty powerful stuff had I not confused the word père, father, with the word pied, which means foot. Not for the love of my foot. The class was hysterical, and I was dying of embarrassment. Being misunderstood was terrible, but for me, the worst thing was not being able to communicate myself. I'm not going to lie. I love to talk, and I love to participate in conversation. But when I was in France, I was robbed of all my tools of communication. All I did was stand by as people laughed and joked. To cope with this, I would just smile and nod, but I really had no idea what anyone was saying. But I guess the most frustrating thing for me was when I accidentally made a grammatical error or accidentally spoke in English. All my classmates were all too ready to correct me or say, "You are in France, you speak French now." I realized that the French really respect and treasure their language. This respect is ingrained in their culture, so much so that even French teenagers are willing to stick up for it. I learned a lot of things in my trip to France, but the main thing that has stuck with me is my newfound belief in the importance of words and expression. My trip really highlighted the significance of language and communication, especially in relation to teenagers. When I arrived back in Australia, I realized that there was a common misconception amongst many adults that they believe that teenagers speak in a series of monotones and grunts. They believe that we have nothing to say, and the little we do say, we communicate through forums such as texting or online media. In fact, teenagers have been notoriously linked with a form of communication known as text speak, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. It involves the shortening of words via abbreviations and acronyms. So, if you found yourself shortening any second word in your text message, or including phrases such as LOL for laugh out loud, or BRB for be right back, you are feeding into the stereotype. Now I know what you're probably thinking. You're thinking I'm going to rant about the importance of literature and accept as degrading the language of text speak. Don't worry, that is not the case. I'm going to try and stay as far away as possible from the stereotype of the pretentious teenager arguing about how detrimental our language skills are for the future generations. I want to defend teen language as I believe it has many positive and beneficial aspects, namely promoting creativity, inducing a sense of belonging and identity, and embracing the progression of technology. Firstly, on the issue of creativity, I believe that text-speak truly does create a sense of creativity amongst teens, as they are able to make their own words and create their own language. Furthermore, I believe that this new language can benefit English and grammar. There was a study done by the University of Tasmania, and they believe that the evolution of text-speak is inherently coupled with a strong grasp of grammar and phonetics. This is because, in order to understand different abbreviations, one must be able to decode and decrypt the message through the understanding of the English language. It's actually a very clever system, a series of mathematical formulas, if you will. Okay, maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but I do believe that by creating these new shortened forms of words, one does obtain a new level of understanding of language. Secondly, text-speak induces a sense of belonging and identity amongst teenagers. I know that many of my friends and I like to make up our own little words that only we understand. At the risk of sounding cliched, these words are actually symbols of the friendship and bond we share. Our common expressions make us feel part of a group, which is really important in adolescent development, as I am told. Not only does it induce a sense of community amongst friends, but it unites the global teen community. I realized this during my trip to France. I was texting one of my friends when she replied using the letters MDR. I first thought, great, something else I don't understand. It probably has something to do with some sort of cheese or baguette. I asked what it meant, and I was told that it stood for mort de rire, which translates to die of laughing. That's when I realized that MDR was the French equivalent of LOL. Who would have thought halfway across the world, teenagers who speak in a different language would also use text-speak? I found this hysterical, and I made sure that I included the phrase MDR in every single one of my sentences. My friends found it really amusing, and then they found it really annoying. But that is when I started to fit into the community, and I felt part of a group. Finally, I believe that teen language embraces the progression of technology. Today, everything moves at a very rapid pace due to the increase in all things technological. It only seems fitting that our means of communication progress with the availability of different mediums. I think us teens have tapped into the communication of the future. With all this new technology, maybe we will have a paperless society one day. I'm not sure about you, but I would be very exciting if all this communication led to the rendering of, will render handwriting as archaic. I, for one, have very illegible handwriting, so I think it would be for the best. But don't get me wrong, I still believe that teenagers should be able to express themselves in more sophisticated means. And I believe that the teenagers of today can do this. I believe they can communicate with adults in intellectual discussions. I believe that we can communicate between one another using text-speak. But we must not forget that face-to-face interaction is also vital in communication, as is speaking eloquently. The trick is getting the balance right. And I truly believe that teenagers of today can do this. I believe they can get the balance right by combining the use of text-speak, adult conversation, and also through communicating through music. As I mentioned before, music really helped me get through all the difficult moments when I was lost in translation. This is a song that I wrote when I was feeling pretty homesick, and it's about growing up in Sydney, which I felt fitting to perform at TEDxYouth. I hope you all enjoy it.